Naya Okonjo stood in the dim service hallway, staring at her reflection in a clouded mirror. She tugged at the itchy collar of her black server's vest. It was 2 sizes too big, and the polyester smelled like industrial detergent. The name tag pinned to her chest said Faith, but that wasn't who she was. Just 8 weeks ago, Naya wasn't entering through the back door near the dumpster. She was walking through the glass front doors of this very building, the Azure Tower, because she was the lead architect who designed it. She knew every steel beam, every hidden vent, and every secret this building held. But tonight, she wasn't here to admire the architecture. She was here for the groom. This is where the story truly begins. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? Which country are you watching? Leave a comment and let me know. And please hit that like button and subscribe to become part of the Family Fractures community for more inspiring stories. Inside the ballroom, the bass of the music made the floor vibrate. It was the wedding of the year in Atlanta's high society. Marcus Thorne, the owner of Thorne Design Group, was marrying into the wealthiest real estate family in the state. To the world, Marcus was a visionary genius, but Naya knew the truth. He was a fraud who stole credit for her work and cut corners that put lives at risk. When she tried to report him, he didn't just fire her, he blacklisted her. He told every firm in the city she was unstable and difficult. He took her career, her savings, and her pride. Naya picked up a heavy tray of crystal flutes. Her hands were steady. Marcus thought he had buried her career for good. He thought she was at home crying over unpaid bills. He didn't know that the nobody pouring champagne tonight held the one thing that could turn his dream wedding into a nightmare. Naya pushed open the heavy service doors. The noise of the crowd hit her like a wave. It was time to go to work. Naya moved through the crowd like a shadow. The ballroom was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows, velvet drapes, and a custom chandelier that looked like cascading raindrops. It was beautiful, and it made her stomach turn. She had sketched that chandelier on a napkin 3 years ago. She had fought the contractors to get those windows installed right. Now, hundreds of guests were toasting the man who claimed he did it all. She spotted Marcus near the center of the room. He was wearing a custom white tuxedo with a black lapel, looking every bit the visionary genius. He was holding court with a group of investors, gesturing wildly with his hands. Naya adjusted her grip on the silver tray and stepped closer, keeping her head slightly bowed. She needed to hear what he was saying. "The inspiration just came to me in a dream," Marcus said, his voice smooth like butter. "I wanted the light to feel like it was dancing. It took me months to get the angles right, but perfection takes time, right?" The investors laughed and nodded, eating up every lie. Naya's jaw tightened. She remembered the late nights, the weekends she missed with her family. The dream he was talking about was actually a 3 a.m. breakthrough she had while eating cold takeout at her desk. 2 months ago, when she confronted him about the missing payments to the subcontractors and the safety corners he was cutting to save cash, he didn't just fire her, he laughed. "Who were they going to believe, Naya?" he had sneered, leaning back in his leather chair. "The face of the company or the angry employee who couldn't handle the pressure?" He had security escort her out like a criminal. He scrubbed her name from the website within the hour. Now, standing just 3 feet away from him, Naya felt that old anger bubbling up. But she pushed it down. Anger makes you messy. Strategy makes you win. Marcus turned, his eyes sweeping over the room. His gaze landed on Naya. For a split second, her heart hammered against her ribs. He looked right at her face, but there was no recognition, no fear. To him, she was just a prop, a pair of hands holding a drink. He took a glass of champagne from her tray without even saying thank you, then turned his back to her to continue his performance. Naya let out a slow, silent breath. Being invisible hurt, but tonight it was her superpower. She watched him take a sip, oblivious to the fact that his life was about to unravel. She didn't just come here to watch, though. She came to collect. She waited until Marcus moved toward the dance floor with his new bride, then she turned sharply toward the service corridor. She wasn't going to the kitchen. She was heading for the maintenance room on the sublevel. As the architect, she knew something about this building that Marcus and his expensive security team had completely forgotten. Naya slipped through the kitchen, dodging a chef screaming about cold appetizers. She found the service elevator and hit the button for the basement. The heavy doors slewed shut, cutting off the music. Silence, finally. As the elevator descended, Naya checked her watch. She had about 20 minutes before the speeches started. That was when Marcus would be most vulnerable. The doors opened to a concrete hallway that smelled of dust and damp air. This was the guts of the Azure Tower, the part Marcus didn't care about because it wasn't pretty. She walked briskly to a gray door labeled Structural Monitoring. It was locked, of course. A red light blinked on the keypad. Marcus had changed all the codes to the executive suites the day he fired her. He probably thought that was enough. But Marcus was a man who looked at the surface, never the foundation. He didn't know that the maintenance codes were hardwired by the installation team, a team Naya had personally hired. She typed in a 6-digit sequence, 100160, October 1st, 1960, Independence Day for Nigeria, her father's favorite date to use for passwords. The light turned green. A heavy click echoed in the hallway. Naya pushed the door open. Inside, rows of servers hummed with green lights. This system tracked everything: air quality, water pressure, and most importantly, structural stress. Marcus had faked the safety reports to get the occupancy permit for the wedding. He claimed the load-bearing supports were reinforced steel. Naya knew they were cheaper, hollow aluminum composites. She sat at the terminal and pulled a flash drive from her vest pocket. Her hands flew across the keyboard. She wasn't hacking, she was just logging in as the admin. "Welcome, architect," the screen flashed. She navigated to the safety override history. There it was, a log showing exactly when the safety sensors were manually disabled, 3 days ago, by Marcus's personal login. "Got you," she whispered. The evidence was right here. This proved fraud, endangerment, and criminal negligence. She started the download. The progress bar crawled forward. 10%, 20%. Suddenly, the metal door behind her creaked. Naya froze. She hadn't closed it all the way. Heavy footsteps scuffed against the concrete floor. They were getting closer. Naya killed the monitor screen, plunging the room into darkness, and ducked behind a tall server rack. "I'm telling you, I saw the elevator move," a deep voice grumbled. It was the head of security. Naya held her breath, clutching the flash drive to her chest. The footsteps stopped right in front of the server rack she was hiding behind. She was trapped, and there was nowhere to run. The flashlight beam sliced through the darkness, missing Nia's face by less than an inch. She pressed her hand hard over her mouth, willing her heart to stop pounding so loud. The guard was big, his shadow stretching long against the concrete wall. He took another step forward. The leather of his boots creaked. He was close enough that Nia could smell the spearmint gum he was chewing. "I know I heard something down here," he muttered to himself. He reached for the handle of the server rack Nia was hiding behind. Nia squeezed her eyes shut. If he found her, it wasn't just game over. It was jail time. Marcus would spin this as corporate espionage or trespassing. She braced herself for the light to hit her face. Bzzz. The radio on the guard's hip crackled to life, loud in the silent room. "Unit 4, where are you? The groom is throwing a fit. He says the paparazzi are trying to breach the VIP entrance. We need bodies at the front gate now." The guard let out a heavy sigh, his hand dropping from the rack handle. "Copy that. On my way. Probably just a raccoon in the basement anyway." He turned and jogged back toward the elevator. Nia didn't move a muscle until the elevator doors slid shut and the mechanical whir fading away. Her legs felt like jelly, but she forced herself up. Adrenaline tasted like copper in her mouth. She turned back to the screen. Download complete. She yanked the flash drive out and shoved it into her bra. No pockets in this cheap vest. She had the proof, the safety logs, the fake inspections, the emails where Marcus explicitly told the contractors to ignore the cracks in the foundation. It was all there. Nia slipped out of the room and took the stairs back up to the kitchen level, skipping the elevator just in case. She emerged back into the chaos of the catering area. Waiters were rushing past with trays of filet mignon. No one looked at her. To them, she was just furniture. She straightened her name tag and grabbed a fresh pitcher of water to blend in. She walked back out into the ballroom. The speeches were starting. Marcus stood at the front of the room, microphone in hand, beaming like a king. "I built this tower," Marcus said, his voice booming over the speakers, not just with steel and glass, but with integrity. The crowd applauded. Nia felt a cold smirk touch her lips. Integrity. She looked toward the back of the room. There, nestled behind a curtain of white roses, was the AV booth. That was the brain of the party. It controlled the lights, the music, and the massive projector screen behind Marcus. Nia began to weave through the tables, moving closer to the booth. She didn't just want to leak this info to the police. She wanted to show these people exactly who they were clapping for. She reached the velvet rope blocking the AV area. It should have been empty. The tech guy usually took a smoke break during speeches. But when Nia pulled back the curtain, she froze. The booth wasn't empty. A young man was sitting there, headphones around his neck, staring right at her. And it wasn't just some random tech guy. It was David, the intern Nia had trained for 2 years, the one person at the firm she thought she could trust, until he sided with Marcus to save his own job. David's eyes went wide. He stood up slowly. "Nia?" he whispered. She was exposed, and this time there was no radio call to save her. David stood there, blocking the console, his eyes darting between Nia and the security guards patrolling the floor below. "Nia, you need to leave," he hissed, his voice shaking. "If Marcus sees you, he's gonna destroy you again." Nia stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. "He didn't destroy me, David. He tried to bury me, but he forgot I'm a seed." She pulled the flash drive from her vest, and right now, I'm about to grow a whole forest of problems for him. David glanced at the drive, then back at the stage where Marcus was now wiping a fake tear from his eye, talking about family values. "David," Nia said, her voice dropping to a calm, dangerous whisper, "I taught you how to read blueprints. I taught you how to spot a weak foundation. Look at him. You know he cut corners on the atrium supports. You saw the memos I sent before he fired me. If this building shifts, and it will, people get hurt. Are you going to cover for him when that happens?" David swallowed hard. He looked at Marcus, then down at his own hands. He was a good kid, just scared. He had a student loan debt that was eating him alive, and Marcus had promised him a promotion. But deep down, he knew the math didn't add up. He told me you were crazy," David muttered, his resistance crumbling. "He said you were trying to blackmail him." "The truth isn't blackmail, David. It's just the truth." On stage, Marcus raised his glass high. "To a future built on trust." The crowd cheered. David looked at Nia one last time. He didn't say a word. He just reached down, unplugged his headset, and stepped away from the console. "I'm going to the bathroom," he said loudly, enough for anyone nearby to hear. "I'll be back in 5 minutes." He walked out of the booth without looking back. Nia didn't waste a second. She slid into the chair and jammed the flash drive into the main port. The system recognized it immediately. On the stage, the massive screen behind Marcus was displaying a slideshow of him and his bride in Paris, Rome, and Tokyo. Nia's fingers flew across the dashboard. She found the source file for the projector. She didn't just want to stop the slideshow, she wanted to replace it. She queued up the file she had named The Real Foundation. Marcus was beaming at his bride. "And now I want to show you all a special video tribute I made for my beautiful wife." Nia hovered her finger over the execute button. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. This was the point of no return. Once she pressed this, there was no going back to her old life, no going back to anonymity. She took a breath. "Happy wedding day, boss," she whispered. She pressed the button. The music cut out instantly. A harsh screech of audio feedback tore through the room, making guests cover their ears. Marcus tapped his microphone, confused. Technical difficulties, folks. Just a second." But it wasn't a glitch. The screen behind him went black. Then a massive, high-definition document appeared. It was a structural safety report, and right in the center, highlighted in red, was a signature authorizing the use of substandard, non-compliant materials. The signature was Marcus Thorne's. The room went dead silent. But Nia wasn't done. That was just the first slide. What came next wasn't just documents. It was a recording she had secretly taken the day she was fired, and the audio was about to blast through every speaker in the ballroom. The silence in the ballroom was heavy, the kind that hurts your ears. Every eye was glued to the massive screen. Marcus laughed nervously, waving his hand at the projector. "It's a prank, everyone! The boys from the fraternity, always joking around." He gestured wildly to the empty sound booth. "Cut the feed, now!" But then the speakers crackled again. This time, it wasn't a document. It was a voice. And not just any voice. It was Marcus's voice, clear as a bell, recorded in high definition. "I don't care what the safety inspector says, Nia. Safety doesn't buy yachts. Margins do." A collective gasp swept through the room. The bride, standing next to Marcus, took a slow step away from him. Her face went pale. Marcus froze, his hand halfway to the microphone. The recording continued. "Use the cheap steel for the atrium. Nobody looks up there anyway. If the roof caves in 10 years from now, who cares? I'll have sold the company by then. I'll be retired on an island while they're digging through the rubble." The words hung in the air like smoke. The wealthy investors, the city officials, and worst of all, the bride's father, who owned half the real estate in Atlanta, were staring at Marcus with a mix of horror and rage. The father-in-law stood up slowly, his face turning a dangerous shade of red. He wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He was looking at Marcus like he wanted to dismantle him. Marcus looked like a trapped animal. He spun around, scanning the room, sweat glistening on his forehead. "This is fake!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "It's AI! It's a deep fake! Someone is trying to sabotage me!" But then he looked up. Straight past the crowd, past the lights, directly at the AV booth. Nia didn't duck. She didn't hide. She stood up and stepped into the light of the booth window. She locked eyes with him, and for the first time in months, she let herself smile. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just caught its prey. Marcus's eyes went wide. He pointed a shaking finger at the booth. "Her!" he shrieked. "Security! It's her! Get her!" 3 large security guards near the stage looked up, saw Nia, and immediately started sprinting toward the stairs. Nia's heart skipped a beat. She had exposed him, yes, but she had forgotten one thing. Marcus controlled the exits, and now she was trapped on the second floor with 3 angry men coming to take her down. The revenge was sweet, but the escape was about to be terrifying. Nia slammed the deadbolt on the AV booth door just as the first heavy shoulder hit it from the outside. The wood frame splintered with a loud crack. They would be inside in less than 10 seconds. This is where the story truly begins. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? Which country are you watching from? Leave a comment and let me know. And please hit that like button and subscribe to become part of the Family Fractures community for more inspiring stories. Nia didn't panic. Panic is for people who don't know the floor plan. She spun around, scanning the ceiling. Most people just saw acoustic piles. Nia saw the access hatch she had personally argued with the contractors to install for emergency lighting rigging. It was right above the sound console. She kicked the swivel chair onto the desk, scrambled up, and punched the ceiling tile hard. It popped open with a puff of drywall dust. "Open a door, now!" a guard roared. Bam! The door hinges screamed. Nia hoisted herself up into the dark crawl space just as the booth door flew off its frame and crashed to the floor. She slid the tile back into place, plunging herself into darkness. Below her, she heard heavy boots stomping around the small room. "Where did she go?" one guard shouted, confused. "There's no other exit." "She must have jumped the balcony. Check the floor." Nia lay flat against the cold metal grating of the catwalk, holding her breath. Through the gaps in the floor, she could see the ballroom below. It was total chaos. The music had stopped. The father-in-law was now holding Marcus by the lapels of his white tuxedo, screaming in his face. Guests were filming everything on their phones. It was the end of Marcus Thorne's career, live-streamed to the world. But Nia couldn't stay to watch the fireworks. She crawled on her hands and knees across the dusty catwalk, heading toward the north side of the building, the bridal wing. It had a private fire escape that led directly to the back alley. She reached the service ladder on the far side and slid down, landing silently in the plush, carpeted hallway of the VIP wing. The air smelled like expensive perfume and hairspray. She smoothed her hair, dusted the gray lint off her vest, and turned the corner to head for the exit. She froze. Standing right in front of the fire escape door, blocking her path, was the bride, Sarah. Her veil was torn off, her mascara was running down her face in black streaks, and she was gripping a heavy crystal vase like a weapon. She stared at Nia, her eyes wild and red. Nia took a step back, raising her hand slowly. "Sarah, I'm not here to hurt you. I just wanted the truth out." Sarah stared at her, her chest heaving. She raised the vase higher, her knuckles turning white. Nia braced herself for a fight. She was ready to defend herself. But Sarah didn't swing. Instead, she let out a shaky breath and asked a question that froze Nia in her tracks. "Did you know?" Sarah's voice trembled, barely a whisper. "The safety reports? The fraud? I believe that. But did you know about the other woman, too?" Nia stared at the bride. The question hung in the air like a storm cloud. "The other woman?" Nia repeated slowly. "Sarah, I knew he was cutting corners on the building. I knew he was stealing wages, but I didn't know about that." This is where the story truly begins. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? Which country are you watching from? Leave a comment and let me know. And please hit that like button and subscribe to become part of the Family Fractures community for more inspiring stories. Sarah let out a broken, dry laugh. She lowered the vase, her hands shaking so hard the crystal rattled. "He's been texting her all morning, even while he was getting dressed." Tears streamed down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "My father, he warned me. He said Marcus was only marrying me because his company was drowning in debt. He said I was just a bailout package in a white dress." Nia felt a sudden pang of pity. She hated Marcus, but she knew exactly what it felt like to be used by him. He used Nia for her brain, and he used Sarah for her bank account. "He's not worth the tears, Sarah," Nia said softly, stepping closer, "but he is worth the revenge." Sarah wiped her face with the back of her hand. The sadness in her eyes hardened into something else, cold rage. He told the police you have a gun, Sarah said quickly. They're setting up a perimeter around the back exits. If you walk out that door, they'll arrest you before you can say a word. Naya's stomach dropped. Then I'm trapped, she said. No, Sarah said. She reached into the deep pocket of her gown and pulled out a key fob with a prancing horse logo. Take his car. It's parked in the loading dock behind the dumpsters, not the valet. He keeps it there for quick getaways. The guards won't check it because they think he's still inside, trying to save his reputation. Naya caught the keys. She looked at Sarah, stunned. You're helping me? I just ruined your wedding. You didn't ruin it. You saved me from it. Now go before I change my mind. Naya didn't waste another second. She sprinted down the metal fire escape stairs, the cool night air hitting her face. She found the car, a sleek black sports car that cost more than Naya's parents' house. She jumped in, threw the server vest in the back, and roared out of the alleyway just as blue lights swarmed the front of the building. She drove for 20 minutes until her heart stopped racing. She pulled into a quiet gas station lot to figure out her next move. She was safe. The evidence was out. Marcus was finished. But as she reached for her phone to call her dad, a notification popped up on the screen. It was an automated alert from the safety override system she had just hacked. Her blood ran cold. The timestamp on the structural log hadn't stopped updating. The sensors in the Azure Tower weren't just showing stress, they were showing critical failure. Naya stared at the red numbers climbing higher and higher on her screen, the vibrations from the loud music, the weight of hundreds of guests jumping in panic. The cheap aluminum supports Marcus installed weren't just cracking, they were snapping. The building wasn't just going to be a crime scene, it was about to be a tomb. And her former boss, the bride, and hundreds of innocent people were still inside. Naya stared at the phone screen, the red critical failure warning pulsing like a heartbeat. Her foot hovered over the gas pedal. She was 5 miles away. She was free. Marcus had destroyed her career, humiliated her, and stolen her work. If the building came down, it would be the ultimate karma. The world would see him for exactly what he was, a ruin. This is where the story truly begins. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? Which country are you watching from? Leave a comment and let me know. And please hit that like button and subscribe to become part of the Family Fractures community for more inspiring stories. But then Naya thought of the kitchen staff. She thought of David, the scared intern. She thought of Sarah, who had just handed her the keys to freedom. Naya Okonjo was an architect. She built things to protect people, not to bury them. Damn it, she hissed. She slammed on the brakes, the tires smoking against the asphalt, and spun the steering wheel. The sports car whipped around, the engine roaring as she floored it back toward the Azure Tower. When she arrived, the scene was chaotic, but not for the right reason. Police cars surrounded the entrance, blue lights flashing. Paparazzi were swarming the front steps. But inside the glass lobby, she could see hundreds of guests standing around, confused and arguing. They weren't evacuating, they were stalling. Naya jumped out of the car and sprinted toward the police line. A large officer stepped in her path, hand on his holster. "Back up, miss. This is a crime scene." "You have to clear the building!" Naya screamed, pointing at the tower. "The structural supports are snapping. The vibrations from the base, it's too much weight. It's going to collapse." The officer looked her up and down, a woman in a baggy, stolen server's vest, yelling crazy theories. "We have the situation under control, ma'am. It's a fraud dispute. Step back or you're going in cuffs." He didn't believe her. Of course he didn't. Naya didn't argue. She ducked under the yellow police tape and took off running. "Hey, stop!" the officer yelled, chasing after her. Naya didn't look back. She burst through the revolving doors into the lobby. The noise inside was deafening. Guests were shouting at staff, demanding refunds. And there, standing on a table in the center of the room, was Marcus. He looked unhinged. His tie was undone, his face purple with rage. He was shouting into a megaphone, "Nobody leaves! The police are just checking permits. If you leave now, you don't get the gift bags. The party continues in 10 minutes." He was blocking the main exit with security guards, refusing to let his image die, even if it meant trapping everyone inside a tomb. Suddenly, a deep, grinding groan echoed through the walls. It sounded like a dying wail. Dust began to drift down from the high ceiling like snow. The guests went silent, looking up. Naya spotted the main fire suppression panel on the far wall. Marcus had disabled the alarms, but he couldn't disable the physics of water pressure. If she pulled the manual release for the deluge system, it wouldn't just ring a bell. It would dump thousands of gallons of water on the crowd. It would ruin the dresses, ruin the floors, and ruin the party instantly. But it would force everyone to run. Naya sprinted toward the panel. Marcus saw her. "You!" Marcus screamed, jumping down from the table. "Stop her! She's trying to ruin everything!" Two security guards lunged toward Naya. She was 10 feet from the lever, 5 feet. Crack! A massive sound, like a gunshot, ripped through the air. A clear, jagged line appeared on the beautiful glass atrium wall behind Marcus. The building shifted beneath their feet, knocking people to the ground. Naya threw herself at the panel, her hand gripping the cold red lever. Marcus tackled her from the side, slamming her into the drywall. "You are not taking this from me! I built this! Me!" Above them, a main steel beam of the atrium let out a screeching tear. A 10-foot shard of glass plummeted from the ceiling, smashing into the marble floor exactly where the guests had been standing seconds before. Naya looked Marcus dead in the eye. "You didn't build a legacy, Marcus," she grunted, struggling against his grip. "You built a coffin." She kneed him hard in the stomach. He doubled over, gasping for air. Naya reached up and yanked the red lever down with all her weight. The fire suppression system exploded to life. It wasn't a sprinkle, it was a deluge. Gallons of cold, pressurized water blasted down from the ceiling, soaking the silk tablecloths, the expensive flowers, and Marcus's custom white tuxedo. The screaming started instantly. But this time, the guests weren't screaming about a ruined party, they were running for their lives. This is where the story truly begins. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? Which country are you watching from? Leave a comment and let me know. And please hit that like button and subscribe to become part of the Family Fractures community for more inspiring stories. The sudden flood of water caused the crowd to surge toward the doors. The panic actually saved them. Naya scrambled to her feet, water dripping from her hair. She didn't look back at Marcus. She followed the flow of the crowd, herding terrified staff members toward the kitchen exit she knew was safe. Marcus was still on his knees in the center of the soaked lobby, trying to scoop up soggy documents that had fallen from his jacket. "My contracts!" he wailed. "Save the contracts!" David, the intern, ran past him. He stopped for a split second, looked at his boss groveling in the water, and then kept running. He didn't look back. Naya burst out into the cool night air of the parking lot just as the building gave its final groan. The sound was like a bomb going off. The massive glass atrium, the crown jewel Marcus had been so proud of, shattered. The steel supports buckled and the entire front facade crumbled inward in a cloud of dust and debris. The crowd gasped, watching from the safety of the street. If they had stayed inside for 2 more minutes, they would have been buried. Police sirens wailed, but this time they weren't coming for Naya. 3 hours later, Naya sat on the back bumper of an ambulance, wrapped in a blanket. A detective stood in front of her, holding the flash drive she had given him. "You saved a lot of people tonight, Miss Okonjo," the detective said. "We checked the logs. He falsified everything." Across the lot, 2 officers were escorting Marcus into a squad car. He wasn't the arrogant visionary anymore. He was wet, covered in drywall dust and shivering. He looked up and saw Naya. He opened his mouth to shout, maybe to blame her one last time, but then he closed it. He realized that for the first time in his life, he had no voice. Sarah, the ex-bride, walked over to Naya. She was wearing a police officer's oversized jacket over her ruined dress. She handed Naya a cup of hot coffee. "I guess the wedding is off," she said, a dry smile on her face. "Better a broken engagement than a funeral," Naya replied. Sarah nodded. "My father is already talking to his lawyers. Marcus won't just go to jail. He's going to be sued for every penny he never actually had." 5 years passed. Marcus Thorne was no longer a CEO. He was inmate 9240 at the Fulton County Correctional Facility, serving a 12-year sentence for gross negligence, fraud, and reckless endangerment. His Thorne Design Group had been dissolved, its assets sold off to pay back the people he cheated. He spent his days in the prison library reading books about architecture, finally learning the basics he ignored his whole career. Naya Okonjo didn't just go back to work, she took over. With the reputation she earned from exposing the Azure Tower scandal, she started her own firm, Okonjo and Associates. She stood now in a sunlit conference room in Lagos, Nigeria, looking out at a skyline she was helping to build. She wore a tailored blue suit that fit perfectly, no more oversized server vests. Next to her stood her head of safety compliance, David. He had finished his degree and was one of the strictest inspectors in the business. And her biggest investor? Sarah's family. They had trusted Naya to rebuild their real estate empire the right way. Naya placed her hand on the glass of the window. She had learned a valuable lesson that night at the gala. Marcus thought power came from how tall you could build a tower, but Naya knew the truth. Power isn't about the height of the roof, it's about the strength of the foundation. If you are listening to this and you feel like someone is taking credit for your hard work, or if you feel small in a room full of fakes, remember this: the truth is like gravity. You can pretend it doesn't exist for a while, but eventually everything built on a lie comes crashing down. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to be the one standing when the dust settles. If this story spoke to you, leave a comment with the word foundation. And if you believe that integrity always wins in the end, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the Family Fractures community for more inspiring stories.